Hi everyone, this is 2B, which is about metric units. Life would be so much easier if I think back in the 70s we tried to go metric and it was just too much for us. But we're probably the only major country in the world that does not use a metric system. And it actually makes a lot of sense because it is on base 10, whereas, like our monetary system is on a base 10 system. But anyway, regardless of that, we do need to know how to use powers of 10, which is the basis of the metric system, and this will help us with our calculator as well. Okay, so instead of like feet, gallons, and pounds, measurements in the metric system are meters, liters, and grams. Meters is our measure length. It's slightly longer than a yardstick, so it's a little over 3 feet. A liter is used to measure volume, and it's slightly more than a quart. And a gram is used to measure mass. A kilogram on Earth weighs a little more than 2 pounds. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I confused myself one time. I got on my scales and it had converted to metric, and I thought there is no way I weigh under 100 anything. So anyway. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this. If we want to decide which one we're going to look at, we just need to know, are we measuring length, volume, or mass, or which is weight, the same thing as, well, kind of the same thing as weight. So the height of a soda can bottle, height is a measure of length, so this would be in meters, since it is length. The weight of a bottle of soda would be grams. And the amount of liquid, this is volume. And I'm sorry, this is weight. So this would be in liters. Okay. Though we in our everyday lives do not use the metric system, it is definitely around us if you're dealing in any kind of scientific thing, or if any of you are going into medicine. It's really important being able to convert. I'm sure they have tables for that. But my sister's a doctor and she talks a lot about that. And, a lot of medications are based on your weight, but it's based in your weight in kilograms. And so, and measurement is measured in cc's, which is cubic centimeters or that sort of thing. So you need to be thinking about that. Okay, so when we have, for example, our distance measures, we start with an inch and then go to a foot and then go to a yard and then we go to a mile and go up that way. When you're dealing in the metric system, you're always going to use meters when you're dealing for length, but then there's a prefix that tells you, is it smaller than a meter or is it larger? So if a D is used for deci and L is used for liters, what is the abbreviation for deciliters? That was going to be DL. Now, it doesn't really matter if you make this a capital or a lowercase l. I always use a capital L so I know I know what it is. If DA is used for deca and G is used for grams, what is the abbreviation in decagrams? That's going to be DAG. Okay. All right, so here's how it works. If you look at a yardstick, you'll notice that it has measurements for feet and it has measurements for inches on it as well. If we are looking at a meter stick, then you are going to have the same thing. You are going to have a centimeter and a millimeter, and there are equivalents. This would mean that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters, 2 centimeters, 20 millimeters. So those are equivalents. This would be the in essence saying that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet or something of that measure. Okay, so if we want to measure the length of the worm from tail to eyeball, so we're going to say it's going from here to here In centimeters, that is 3 centimeters, and in millimeters, that is 30. Well, and you've noticed if these are powers of 10. If you multiply 3 times 10, you get 30. Okay, so when you measured the worm, do you have more centimeters or millimeters? This is the largest number, so you have more millimeters. Which is the larger unit of measure, the centimeter or the millimeter? That's going to be the centimeter. This is just, again, like saying if this was 1 yard and you had 3 feet, say for example you had that on a ruler. If you had this 1, 2, so this would be your feet, and this would be your yard. So this would be 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and this would be 1 yard. So since the yard is the longer measurement, and you have more feet. Okay, so what operation can you perform on centimeters to get the number of millimeters? You can multiply by 10. Okay, and we just talked about that. Okay, so since everything deals in powers of 10, one of the things that you're going to need to do is know how to do this on your calculator. So we want to be able to practice that. As you're doing this, if you look at here, you've got some calculator tips to make sure you know how to do it. Now, you're either going to use a caret key, or depending on your calculator, it's going to say y to the x. So in this, you would put in your number, hit y to the x, and then put the exponent. So you would type it this way, and if you want to use a negative exponent, then make sure you use the negative key, not the minus key. Okay. So this will just get you to practice a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and show you on my calculator what it looks like. And you can see I've already been playing with this. All right, so if I want to do 10 to the second, on my calculator, I have it's called a caret key, the up arrow key. So that would be 10 to the second, and then times 10 to the third. And I end up with a 1 with a bunch of zeros, and that actually becomes 1 million. Oh, I'm sorry, 100,000. Okay. If I have 10 to the negative 6 times 10 to the third, to the third, then that gives me 0.001. The next one, I'm going to let you try this one on your own. This should be 0.001. But now the division, let's make sure we know how to do that. If I want to do 10 to the fifth divided by 10 to the third, and your calculator, you may need to put parentheses around these, but I'm going to get 100. 10 to the third divided by 10 to the fifth. To save time, I'm going to go ahead and just write this as 0.01. Notice when I'm writing things after the decimal point, I always put a 0 in the front, and that is strictly so I know that there is a decimal point there, in case it, I key it in lightly. And 10 to the second divided by 10 to the negative 1 is 1,000. All right, we are not going to go into this a lot. On the next page, it starts out with a common metric prefixes. And so here's what's going to happen is you are going to have your base, and then you are going to do a prefix, which means you're going to multiply it either by 10 to a positive exponent or 10 to a negative exponent. This starts here. This is your smallest. And it goes to deci, and then from here you go to your base, and And then you go to your larger values until you get to your largest down here. Whoops, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn that. Okay, and these are all the prefixes. Some of them you may or may not have heard of. Milli means 1,000th. Micro is 1,000,000th. Deci is 1/10. Deca is 10. Kilo is 1,000. I'm sure you've heard of kilograms or kilometers. And giga, if you're hear anything about computers, giga is 10 to the 9th, which is a billion. And tera is a trillion. Now, an easier way to see this, what I've created here is a thing with the prefixes that go from small to large. And for you to see what they do. So if you start off at pico, and these are not things you're going to use a lot, but pico is 1/1,000,000th. And you can see what that is in decimal form, and so you can practice on your calculator. Notice -12 is a very small number, and it goes up to +12. So you're going from a small up to a large. And this takes you from a pico to a nano to a micro, which is 10 to the -6, milli, which is 1,000th, centi, which is 100th, 1/10th, and then you have your base. This is where you start. This is either your liter, your gram, your meter, whatever. So anything smaller than a meter, like a centimeter, would be 1/100th of a meter. A millimeter would be 1/1000th of a meter. Then if you go this way, so if you talk to like a kilometer is going to be 1,000 times the length of a meter. Just like they say that a mile is 5,280 feet, a kilometer is 1,000 meters. So it's the same thing. It's just, it actually, to me, it just makes a little bit more sense. And then you keep on going. But these are the values in decimal form. If you try putting these in your calculator, chances are you're going to get something in scientific notation, so don't freak out about that. And we're not going to use these great big ones because of calculator problems with that. Okay, before we go on to these next problems, it's time to switch videos.